Tonight, when it gets cold, you do something so simple you barely notice it. You pull a blanket higher, you turn a small dial, and warm air fills the room. Maybe you put on socks or slide closer to another person under the same blanket. Within minutes, the cold that was biting into your skin becomes a memory. Now picture a night 40,000 years ago. You are lying on the ground somewhere in what is now Northern Europe, in the middle of an ice age. There is no blanket factory, no heater, no glass window to stop the wind. The temperature outside might be far below freezing, and inside the shelter, it is not much better. Your body, the same body sitting in a warm room right now, still has to survive that night. It still needs warmth to keep the heart beating strong and the blood moving to the brain. But almost everything around you is working against that. The wind cuts through gaps in the shelter. The ground pulls heat out of your skin the moment you lie down on it. And unlike a bear or a wolf resting nearby, your skin has almost no fur left to trap warmth close to your body. So here is the real question. If early humans had already given up their fur for a hot climate far away in Africa, how did their children and grandchildren survive nights that could kill a person in a few hours without protection? The answer is not luck. It is one of the most overlooked survival stories in human history, built from fire, skin, bone, and people holding on to each other in the dark, long before anyone had a word for winter. Your body did not evolve for cold. Your ancestors' hairless, sweaty skin was a masterpiece for hunting under a burning African sun, built to dump heat fast through millions of tiny sweat glands. But that same skin became a serious problem the moment humans moved into colder lands across Europe and Asia. Without thick fur, heat escapes your body constantly, like water leaking from a cracked cup. Your body fought back in small, quiet ways. Blood vessels near your skin narrow tightly in the cold, a process called vasoconstriction, pulling warm blood away from your hands, feet, and face and keeping it locked around your heart, lungs, and brain, the organs that cannot survive a cold hit. That is the real reason your fingers go numb before anything else does. Your muscles start to shiver, tiny, fast contractions that burn energy and produce heat as a side effect, almost like your body lighting a small internal fire without you ever asking it to. Some people also carry a special kind of fat called brown fat, packed with tiny heat-producing engines inside each cell, built purely to warm the body from the inside out. These tools helped, but they were never enough on their own. Shivering burns through energy fast, and a hunter-gatherer could not afford to shiver all night while also needing strength to hunt and walk the next day. Biology alone could buy a few hours, not a whole freezing season. So evolution left the rest of the job to something far more powerful than any gene, human intelligence, and the ability to pass one good idea from a single mind to an entire group. That intelligence led to the single biggest turning point in the story of staying warm at night, learning to keep a fire alive long after the sun went down. Fire changed everything, but it did not appear overnight. Inside Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, scientists found burnt bone and ash dating back almost 1 million years, some of the earliest proof that early humans were using fire inside a shelter, not just running from it after a lightning strike. Later, at a site called Gesher Benot Yaakov in modern-day Israel, researchers found burned wood and tools clustered tightly around what looks like an old hearth, dated to nearly 800,000 years ago. This tells us something important. Long before humans had proper clothing, they had already learned to bring a small piece of the sun indoors with them at night, but controlling fire was never as simple as lighting it once. A fire left alone dies within hours, and a dead fire in the middle of a freezing night could mean death by morning. So someone had to stay close to it, feed it small pieces of wood or dry grass, and shield it from wind and rain. This turned firekeeping into one of the earliest shared responsibilities in human history. Picture a small group gathered close. An older person half awake near the flame, a child sleeping just far enough away not to get burned. Someone else's hand reaching out every so often to add another branch without even fully waking up. This was not a lonely task. It was quiet teamwork, repeated for hundreds of thousands of nights, long before anyone wrote a single word about it. The people who kept that fire alive were not just warming themselves. They were protecting everyone around them from the cold, from predators drawn toward the light, and from the simple, Brutal fact that the human body was never built to face a freezing night completely alone. Fire could warm a small circle of air, but it could not follow anyone away from the flame. That gap is exactly what clothing and shelter were built to close. Scientists found a clever way to date the invention of clothing, not from cloth itself, which rots away within a few years, but from lice. Body lice can only survive inside clothing, not on bare skin, so researchers compared their DNA to head lice and calculated when the two separated into different species. Their answer, published by a research team from the University of Florida, pointed to around 170,000 years ago, a time that lines up closely with humans first pushing into colder regions outside Africa. At first, this clothing was probably nothing more than a loose animal hide thrown over the shoulders like a heavy blanket. But burial sites like Songhir in modern-day Russia, roughly 30,000 years old, show tightly patterned rows of beads once sewn onto fitted clothing, hinting at garments actually shaped to the body, not just draped over it. In Oregon, archaeologists even found pieces of sewn hide from around 12,000 years ago, stitched together during a sudden harsh cold snap, proof that people were sewing warmth directly onto their bodies exactly when they needed it most. Shelter grew just as clever. On the cold, treeless plains of what is now Ukraine, people built entire homes using the bones of mammoths, stacking skulls and jawbones into thick walls and covering the frame with animal skin, with a small hearth glowing at the center. These were not caves simply handed to them by nature. These were homes built by hand, bone by bone, skin by skin, engineered purely to survive a season that could easily kill anyone caught unprepared. But maybe the most powerful tool against the cold was never a material at all. It was other people. In freezing conditions, human bodies sleeping close together share warmth directly, skin against skin or body against body, through a layer of hide, cutting heat loss in a way no single sleeper could ever manage alone. Children were almost certainly placed in the center of the group, protected on every side by the warmth and the bodies of parents, older siblings, and grandparents, while the adults took the outer, colder edges like a living wall. Someone likely stayed lightly awake through parts of the night, just as people did in warmer climates too, checking the fire, listening for danger, gently pulling a sleeping child a little closer to the heat. Surviving a freezing night was never really a solo achievement, and it was never only about one body's own heat. It was about trust, about people choosing to sleep shoulder to shoulder with others, because the alternative, sleeping alone in the open cold, was often a quiet ending that nobody would even notice until morning. Tonight, when you pull a blanket over your shoulders or feel the warmth of another person beside you, you are repeating something written into human behavior for hundreds of thousands of years. Your ancestors could not buy warmth from a store, but they built it anyway. Out of shivering muscles, glowing fires, sewn hides, mammoth bone walls, and bodies pressed together in the dark. They never had a heater. What they had was each other, and somehow, night after night, freezing winter after freezing winter, that was enough to carry the human story.